Hello, everyone. It is 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We are ready for Ms. Sandra Murphy's dissertation defense. This defense is recorded. I also like to acknowledge the committee, Dr. Toller and Dr. Calares, and also myself, Dr. Fernando Poulet. Ms. Murphy will have approximately 30 to 40 minutes to present her dissertation defense. Thereafter, we will have a question and answer segment for about 10 to 15 minutes. Thereafter, the committee will convene for about 10 minutes. Thereafter, we will return with a decision. So again, we welcome Ms. Murphy. And Ms. Murphy, you have the floor. You may begin.
Thank you, Dr. Fernanda Poole. First, I would like to acknowledge my ancestors, on whose shoulders I stand on. Ashe. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandra Murphy, and I am a Doctor of Education candidate in organizational leadership at Franklin University. Today, I will be defending my dissertation entitled Academic Disengagement of African American Male Students in Classroom Settings, a Qualitative Descriptive Study. After 20 years as a professional hair and makeup artist in film, television, and theater, I transitioned industries and earned my master's degree in urban education. For 5 years, I served as an elementary and middle school teacher in Harlem and the Bronx, New York, where I saw firsthand frustrated students who struggled with their studies and curriculum and lacked motivation in learning. My dissertation research added to the conversation and gained insight from an instructor's perspective on African American male middle school student disengagement. Definition of terms. Here are definitions for key terms in my research. My study defines academic disengagement as a lack of inquisitiveness, interest, motivation, inspiration, and participation in educational activities, Corsia 2018. In my study, African American describes Americans of African ancestry, including descendants of enslaved Africans who were persecuted and oppressed during chattel slavery. I will also use the term Black interchangeably during this presentation. Middle school is defined in my study as 6th through 8th grade levels, which is consistent with the New York State Department of Education. In my study, middle school students are those ranging from 10 to 13 years of age, as defined by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. My study geographically defines the city of New York as the 5 boroughs of the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. Background and need for study. There is significant educational research on African American male middle school students. Much of it centers on performance, such as graduation rates, standardized test scores, and the achievement gap. These metrics are often influenced by and reflective of a student's level of engagement in classroom. However, existing scholarships does not capture the contemporary development of academic disengagement among Black male middle school students from a pedagogical perspective. As a researcher, I wanted to explore the root of academic disengagement and expand the discussion in this field. Problem statement. As mentioned, this study aim to close the current scholarship gap by delving into instructors' perception of disengaged African American middle school students. It is important for researchers to document and understand how student disengagement is viewed from the teacher's perspective. Purpose statement. All in all, the purpose of this qualitative descriptive study was to explore how middle school teachers describe academic disengagement in New York City. Theoretical framework. This research was grounded in 3 core theoretical frameworks. They are as follows: cultural historical activity theory, CHAT. CHAT was created by Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky. The theory explains the importance of language, history, and culture in shaping a child's cognition and critical thinking, known as the Zone of Proximal Development, ZPD. According to Vygotsky, the ZPD enables a student to learn by scaffolding, where an adult, be it a teacher, a parent, a skilled expert in their field, helps to facilitate the student in their academics with knowledge and skill. Over time, the role of the scaffolder diminishes as the student develops and becomes more confident in their abilities, independent, and become creative learners. Cultural ecological theory of minority school performance, CET. CET was established by Nigerian American anthropologist John Ugbo. Ugbo argued that minority students often underperform in schools due to cultural differences and discrimination. CET makes 2 distinctions between minority students. They are voluntary minorities, families who migrate to the United States by choice, assimilate and perform well academically due to their aspirations for social economic advancement and professional achievement. In contrast, involuntary minorities, groups that have been historically marginalized and subordinated, including descendants of enslaved Africans, face significant challenges in education due to the historical ongoing structural inequalities, which can lead to academic disengagement and lower achievement. Ugbo suggests that the dominant culture may have negative stereotypes and low expectations of minority students, which creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of academic failure, which is prohibited in African culture. Critical race theory, CRT. Critical race theory was created by American legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, based on the original work by Derek Bell. When applied to education, CRT examines the ways in which race and racism operates in school culture and classroom management. This includes analyzing the effects of policies and practices on marginalized groups by examining the role of race in educational decision-making and resolving the issues of historical presentation in curriculum and literature. CRT has led to the development and has opened the conversation of culturally responsive teaching methods and recognition of the historical importance of diversity and inclusion in education. CRT believes that truth education has a liberating effect on students, teachers, and communities who were forced to accept historical falsehoods for centuries that influence America's fundamentals and social arrangement. Research methodology. My study used the qualitative methodology to capture nuanced social phenomena and interactions that could not be captured by quantitative approach. Qualitative research provides a contextual understanding by focusing on people's subjective experiences and perceptions. It involves collecting and analyzing non-numerical data, such as interviews, which were used in this study. Research design. This qualitative descriptive study captures the insight of New York City middle school teachers regarding the academic disengagement of African American male students. Collecting in-depth data through semi-structured interviews allow for flexibility, including follow-up questions and exploration of new ideas in the interview. It also allows for a more natural, organic conversation to take place, permitting me, the researcher, to collect comprehensive information. Phenomenon. This qualitative descriptive research study describes the phenomenon and its characteristics of how academic disengagement influences African American male students. The research question centered in this study was, how do middle school teachers describe the academic disengagement of African American male students? Population, target population, and sample. The population for this qualitative descriptive study were middle school teachers in New York. The target population were middle school teachers who taught in the city of New York. The sample was New York City middle school teachers with at least 2 years of teaching experience. To achieve data saturation, I sought a sample size of 10 to 15 participants, ultimately achieving a sample size of 11. Data collection. After receiving approval from Franklin University's Institutional Review Board, IRB, I began the data collection process. As an educator with a vast network of other academic professionals, I utilized my personal Facebook page, posting the flyer, as you can see on the screen, to recruit study participants. Due to a slow initial recruitment response, I leveraged the snowball sampling technique, where participants recommended their colleagues to partake in my study. Through their recommendations, I was able to secure the study sample size of 11. Data collection procedure. To facilitate data collection, I employed the following steps. Teachers who saw my Facebook flyer and expressed interest were emailed a screening questionnaire to confirm their eligibility for the study. Next, interested participants received a consent form that provided additional study information, including participant confidentiality, data privacy, and security. Eligible participants also received a demographic questionnaire capturing their gender, ethnic identity, level of education, teaching discipline, and the years of teaching experience. When I received both the signed consent form and the completed demographic questionnaire from eligible participants, I scheduled a 45 to 60-minute Zoom interview session. Demographic profile data. The table on the screen depicts the demographics of the 11 middle school teachers who participated in this qualitative descriptive study. Each participant was given an identifier, MT, meaning middle school teacher, and then assigned a number, for example, MT 1 through 11. The gender, ethnic identity, level of education, teaching discipline, and years of teaching experiences are displayed here, as is the key. Overall, my study participants were, the majority were male participants, the majority were African Americans, more than half held a bachelor's degree, most taught social studies, most had 2 to 9 years of teaching experience. Data analysis procedure. To analyze my qualitative data, I employed Braun and Clark 2021 6-step thematic approach, which provided a structural foundation based on thematic patterns. After using Trent, which is an automation transcription service, to transcribe my recorded in-depth interviews, I uploaded the transcriptions into MaxQDA, which is a qualitative data analysis software that helps the researcher code data and guide theme development. First, I immersed myself reading and rereading the MaxQDA data to gain a thorough understanding of the content. Then I generated 13 initial codes that captured important features, phrases, and concepts. Examples of the codes were home environment, parent-teacher relationship, peer influence, teacher diversity, and curriculum. Then I grouped the codes into 5 potential themes. Then I reviewed and refined the initial themes, ensuring that they did not duplicate each other and were coherent, meaningful, and accurately represented the data. With those steps completed, I finalized the themes, providing clear definitions and appropriately naming the themes according to their content. Finally, my write-up. Providing a detailed account of the identified themes and their supporting evidence from the data of my 11 participants. Results. Upon completion of data analysis, the following 5 themes emerged. Theme 1, parental involvement. 2, school resources. 3, culture. 4, student identity and classroom representation. 5, student development and mental health. Theme 1, parental involvement. There was consensus across all 11 study participants that parental involvement was a crucial factor that influenced academic disengagement. Parental involvement refers to the actions and support parents provide to encourage their children's education, according to Kandufu 2012. Participants concurred that many parents were not fulfilling their obligations when it comes to emphasizing the importance of education and seeing to the academic needs of their children, such as homework help and, most importantly, classroom preparedness. Participants also noted that many of their male students came from single-parent, women-led households, and they were lacking male figures to support them academically, socially, and emotionally. MT10 captures teachers' frustration regarding the lack of parental support. MT10 states, it's just very difficult when students that are having the most trouble in academics or behavioral issues always seem to stem from a lack of support from the home. 8 of the 11 participants contended that an active partnership and clear lines of communication between the teacher and parent produces a higher level of student engagement, as evidenced by the quote from MT4. MT4 quotes, I want parents to understand that I care about your child. I care about their success beyond just my class. End of quote. In summary, participants agreed that parental involvement is crucial for promoting academic engagement, and educators and schools must encourage and support parents who may be academically powerless, frustrated, and feeling their own academic inferiority and weakness. Supporting parents helps to diminish disengagement and stimulate student engagement. Wilson, 2017. Theme 2 results, school resources. 6 of the 11 participants asserted that limited school resources have a significant impact on student learning, challenging students' interest and engagement activities. Classroom resources are essential in engaging students in the learning process. Educational tools that are up to date, relevant, and accessible to all students can help prevent academic disengagement and modernize the students' critical thinking. Sue, 2018. For many Black students, under-resourced schools are the norm, which is unfortunate. As a result, teachers regularly have to use their own funds to purchase needed materials as described by MT1. MT1 states, I wonder how much of the money truly goes to the school and for the much needed classroom supplies that are allocated to the students, and why should teachers tap into their own personal pocketbooks for money to secure the proper tools to educate their students? MT5 states, school resources, it's all political. With an unequal distribution of educational resources, funds, and benefits, African American male middle school students are paying the price and falling behind academically, possibly affecting their lives forever. Theme 3, culture. Some participants agreed that academic experiences of African American male middle school students are directly influenced by cultural factors, such as their peer group, their social environment, and racial socialization. Some participants remarked on the lack of cultural sensitivity amongst fellow educators, noting that racial biases and stereotypes can lead to academic disengagement among Black students. White teachers, who make up the majority of the teaching workforce, may unintentionally perpetrate these biases through their interactions with Black students, as described by MT8 and MT5. MT8 states, fragmented where disengagement rears its ugly head, where teachers of different culture and socioeconomic backgrounds are frustrated for lack of understanding and misinformation. MT5 states having the knowledge of multicultural experiences from a teacher's perspective keeps students from being disengaged and more appreciative of their own self-worth and historical background. Social media can further exacerbate these biases by providing a platform for the dissemination of stereotypes. It can also reduce a student's focus, limit productivity, and hinder time management for their academic scheduling and classroom readiness. Theme 4, identity and classroom representation. 5 participants voiced that African American middle school male students are deprived of cultural representation and struggle to identify with the curriculums that does not value their history, traditions, and customs, contributing to the feeling of academic discontentment and disconnect. In addition, 4 participants noted that the lack of Black male teachers' representation in the classroom has an adverse impact on student engagement. In New York City in 2022, Black male teachers only comprised of 4% of educators in the classroom. MT4 states Black boys are in dire need of a male figure to teach and guide them instructionally with their coursework, personal needs, and outside interest that is best suited for male boys. MT8 states, a lot of the teachers, like I said, are white female teachers who are not connected with our communities and our culture, structure, and traditions. Based on participant responses, Black boys are physically present but feel academically invisible. Browder, 2016. Educators believe promoting self-esteem and self-reliance is a catalyst for academic engagement. Theme 5, student development and mental health. Middle school students are navigating the transition from childhood to adolescence. These changes are associated with an increased emergence of mental health disorders, such as depression and anxiety. Wilson, 2018. Black male adolescents are disproportionately impacted by traumatic events such as racism, parental abuse, food insecurity, and poverty. Mental health issues can impact students' ability to engage in their academic pursuits by reducing their concentration and focus, decreasing their motivation, straining their relationships with parents and teachers, increasing their feeling of isolation, limiting extracurricular activities, as well as increasing absenteeism from school. Wilson, 2018. 8 participants highlighted the growing behavioral health crises in schools, noting that Black male middle school students' mental health challenges erode their ability to successfully engage in their education with clarity. MT4 shared, mental illness and middle school demographics is becoming synonymous with disengagement. Participants agreed that there is a need for additional mental health professionals in the schools, better staffing, addressing mental health concerns not only support the well-being and behavior of students, but also their academic achievements. Findings compared to other studies. My findings concurred with existing research, which examines the multifaceted nature of student engagement. When parents are involved in their child's education, students are more likely to be engaged, optimistic, and passionate about learning. Park, 2017. Schools with fewer resources such as inadequate facilities, outdated textbooks, and limited access to technology were more likely to have disengaged students. African American male students strive for representation in education and visibility. Black educators are valuable and vital to the educational experiences of Black boys. Kunjufu, 2012. Adolescence, which includes in some cases the onset of health disorders, have a complex and varied impact on the academic engagement of middle school African American male students who are struggling with their autonomy and identification. They're saying, "Who am I? Please listen to me. I'm visible." Swanson, 2003. Theoretical implications. The findings in this study connect to several other educational theories. My findings highlight critical race theory and the role of systematic racism, institutionalized oppression, and structural barriers in education and the academic disengagement of Black boys. CRT also explains the ideology of colorism, which is a residue of slavery. Colorism is a form of bias where the shade or tone of a person's skin generates social treatment or disadvantages. In the classroom, colorism can be perpetrated where darker skinned students are isolated and invisible versus lighter skinned students, children, who are seen and valued. This can cause social distress, misery, and uneasiness in the classroom for darker skinned students. Advocating academic disengagement. My results underscores the impact of stereotype threat as described by Ugbo. African American male students are viewed through a negative lens of stereotypes, contributing to academic underachievement. Ugbo's cultural ecological theory argues that Black middle school students want to achieve academically. However, they avoid excelling to fit in with their peers and not to be labeled as acting white in language, behavior, and characteristics. By doing so, Black male students reject the European educational model and the perception of white student superiority. Practical implications. As New York City schools continue to navigate the challenges of COVID-19 learning environments, the findings of this study can be practically implemented. To improve parental involvement, middle schools can better support parents' engagement in academic activities. For example, schools should provide parental resources such as tutoring services, study groups, homework clubs, and time management tools to help parents better support their children's academic success and their parental practices as well. City and state policymakers should utilize the remaining federal pandemic funds to invest in under-resourced schools to ensure that they have adequate tools such as computers, high-speed internet service, and updated textbooks with positive images, 21st century knowledge that applies to 21st century education. To address students' ability to identify and relate to their coursework and instruction, schools need to increase cultural sensitivity, training, and competency. Teachers can also establish professional learning communities, PLCs, to help motivate each other positively and help colleagues that are grappling with unsupportive administrations where their professionalism is taken for granted. Study strengths. This research provides a deeper understanding from an instructor's perspective on the challenges facing African American male middle school students. The study findings can guide the creation of targeted programs, newly crafted innovations, strategies, and initiatives aimed at addressing the unique needs of this particular demographic. Ultimately, promoting their academic success and well-being through their civic life and global community participation. This knowledge can be used by educators, school administrators, policymakers, communities, and families to help develop well-structured practices to help with academic engagement for African American male middle school students. Study limitations. There were three primary limitations that impacted this study. Sample size and representation. My sample size of 11 participants may not be representative of areas outside of New York City, limiting the generalizability of the findings. Self-reporting and social desirability bias. In their interviews, respondents may have provided answers that were perhaps politically correct, perceived as socially acceptable, potentially leading to inaccurate or incomplete information. This bias could impact the reliability of the findings. Lack of causality. Because this research employed a qualitative approach, I could not establish a cause and effect for academic disengagement. Qualitative research can generally only identify correlations or associations between phenomena, Saldana and Omasta, 2022. In this study, the phenomena was how academic disengagement influences African American male students. Demonstrating cause and effect can often require an experimental quantitative research design, which was not applied for this study. Recommendations for future research. Let's move forward. Additional research is needed to better understand the following. Further investigation into African American male student family configuration and availability of community support can provide more insight into ways to improve their academic engagement. Research delving into student-teacher relationship can empower educators by identifying effective leadership and teaching styles and methods that best engage Black male students. Research into long-term effects of culturally responsive pedagogy on students' engagement and learning maturation will provide further support for a new teaching framework and teaching method. Finally, future research could benefit immensely from a comparative study that examines differences in academic engagement and disengagement among African American male students across different regions, schools, or educational systems that promote equality and curriculum development best suited for African American male students at the middle school level for their growth development. In conclusion, I want to leave you with a quote that underscores and captures the essence of my study. Words from abolitionist, orator, freedom fighter, Frederick Douglass, who stated around 1855, "It is easier to build children, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Finally, I would like to recognize and thank my committee members who guided me throughout every step of my dissertation process. To my chair, Dr. Fernando Poole, thank you for giving me a new vision and pathway into educational research and study. To Dr. Toller, thank you for your ability, to help me stay calm and focused. Dr. Claris, I appreciate your words of wisdom that I'm adding to the conversation, and I'm writing a book one day. My references. Here are my references, that inform my research and today's defense presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Thank you, thank you. Good job, wonderful. Now we will have some questions from the audience, and then we'll have some questions for the committee members. Any questions from the audience?
I think I'll ask a couple of questions here. And I thank you for the good presentation, Sandra. One of the questions that I have is related to the research bias. Did you have any bias coming in, or some leanings coming into this study? And how then did you address that as you went about your study in analyzing the data and so on?
You're asking me, did I have bias from...
Yeah, or leanings, I mean, yeah.
From my participants?
No, coming to this study, because again, you had talked about your personal experiences as an instructor, as a teacher coming into the study. So did that in any way influence? Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, pronounce your letter, Dr. Chungwane. You can't help but have a bias, but being a professional, I didn't let any bias disrupt my research study. In other words, I depleted and I removed myself from those biases. And I realized that I had to remain neutral in order to get a concise research results. So yes and no, but no, the biases were not there. I wanted to hear directly from my participants, my teachers, and to gain more of an insight into their experiences in disengagement. And with my participants, yes, there was certain biases, but in a case like this, since this is a social science experiment or research, the heart sometimes overcomes, but we were very basic, organic, and neutral in the resolution in the research. Does that answer you?
Yes, and the next question here would be, okay, given the findings of your study, what new thing or new things do you believe that your study has added to the body of literature? Because again, I looked at your findings, it seemed to have conformed to a lot of other previous studies. So what would you say was one or two things that your study has added to the body of knowledge or literature?
I think the educational system needs to be revamped. We need to find better ways of teaching a certain demographic, and this demographic is African American boys. There needs to be funding. There needs to be teachers who are more acquainted and experienced in dealing with this demographic. Instead of hiring teachers who are so removed from this particular community, there should be more outreach and more training that allows teachers to understand that students are not monolithic and they come in many size, shapes, and cultural backgrounds. And I think there needs to be more understanding of that. There needs to be more literature because the literature gap was extremely disappointing. So we need to really invest in this generation and the next generations to come. Because if we keep pretending that these issues don't exist, we're not getting anywhere. So getting more involved in the educational system and speaking up and not being afraid of the repercussions, not being afraid to be that teacher that advocates, teaching spirit, teaching liberation. And I don't see enough of that. So I would bring that, teaching abolitionists to the table, putting that word in the mix. So that would be my contribution to the teaching profession.
Okay, thank you. That is very passionate. And so was that reflected in the findings of the study? Or from the findings of the study?
I think it was. I think if you understood what the findings were and what I was capturing, yes, because I explained that. The liberation of truthful teaching, i.e. CRT. That's a whole different conversation that we didn't have before, but we're having it now. So that has helped and aided and guided more teachers to be open and are willing to expose themselves from a different perspective, where they want to teach Black children to be more receptive and to be more loving and to understand that education is powerful and power, and they have to have that power in order to gain access to the global stage that we are embarking on each and every day. So yes, there was a lot in my study that guided me through that.
Not to hog the entire time, I just have one final question. I noted from the sample, the demographic description of your participants that you had, I think, I mean, the majority were African Americans, and then there were 2 or 3 that were not African American. Again, when you did your analysis, did you see any distinct differences from the way the different demographics, I mean, here in terms of race, responded to your questions, or was it consistent across the board? Because to me, I think that would have been a very powerful part of the finding to highlight in your study in terms of, okay, the non-African Americans that you interviewed, the way they responded to your questions and maybe the way you coded their responses. I mean, was it consistent with a majority of the African American participants, or were there some differences?
It was consistent, believe it or not. I believe I had one white male teacher. He was really passionate. He wants to see Black students, Black kids achieve. He said, I'm so distressed. These kids come into the classroom, not prepared, sleeping, not even willing to engage and to appreciate what education is about. And you have parents piggybacking on the same thing that are not encouraging their students to be more academically assertive. Yes, and then I had a Hispanic, I believe it was 2 Hispanic participants. So it's across the board. We cannot separate education according to ethnicities, because education involves everything, everyone. It's like you put it in a bowl and you mix it up and you hope and pray that whatever that mixture is and whatever that dish is, it's going to be edible. It's going to be successful. It's going to be what you need it to be sustainable and to nourish you. So it doesn't matter whether you're Black, you're white, whatever your ethnicity is. It was across the board. Black children are suffering. They're in dire need of proper curriculum, pedagogy, and teacher responsibility and sensitivity coming from all angles, from all groups. So, no, there wasn't a separation. It was a collection. Teachers agreed, we got to do better. We got to do better as teachers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the audience? If not, we will not have questions from the committee. And I will start, and I want to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Shanwani just mentioned in terms of how your study adds value. In the early 90s, there was a lot of research going on about African American males in the 90s, which really encouraged me to do my doctoral studies dealing with African American males. But after somewhere between late 90s and early 2000s, somewhere in between there, the research declined in terms of a lot of the studies that were about African American males. There was a whole lot in the 90s, and all of a sudden, somewhere in the 2000s, it dipped. We were just talking about this with some other colleagues in higher education, and it declined. And I know one of my former colleagues who's at the Ohio State University, he was a provost there. He also talked about how the research started to decline a lot. It was up in the 90s, and now here we are again talking about the African American males. And so now your study now adds that value in terms of more research now coming back about what is going on with African American children and males. And it was high in the 90s. That really encouraged me. That was the breast in terms of why I wanted to get my doctorate. And I did my dissertation a long time ago dealing with African American males. So now here we are again. So your study absolutely adds value to the body of knowledge, because there was a decline in that research and now it's up again. And now you're adding that conversation back in there in terms of what can we do? Here we are. Now we're having these conversations again. So I thank Dr. Shanwani for his question, because it really rings a bell in terms of research and what's needed, and certainly studies dealing with what's going on with African American children, especially being African American myself, is highly, highly needed. And your study definitely adds value to the body of knowledge. So I do have a question for you. Yes. What are you considering doing with this research in the future, and why?
That's a great question. I want to, well, my personal interest, I want to open up my own school. And that will consist of, the fundamentals, the foundation of education, the STEM, science, mathematics, so forth and so on. But I feel that students across the board need more performance, need more activities in the creative aspects of the world. They're not getting enough academics or structured or structural pursuance or instructions when it comes to the performing arts. And that includes music, drama, literature. There's no social capital. There's no cultural capital. We send our children to school each and every day, depending on the structure of the school, and we expect them to sit in a classroom that's set up in a stoic military style that doesn't give them the flexibility to be creative and to move and to enjoy their ability to learn. And African American boys, you cannot put a Black boy in a classroom for what 4 or 5 hours and expect him not to move and not to get up and roam and converse and, be active, where he's not disruptive, but active enough where he feels that you appreciate him and his creativity and his culture and his ability to learn through movement and learn through creativity. And I think a lot of the teachers now, everything is done on a schedule, 45-minute increments. You do this, you do that. And we're not giving our children enough leeway to breathe, to feel like they are a part of something that's bigger than them, to give them the opportunity to be excellent in their classroom performance. And I think that's a discredit. Black kids need to experiment. They need to feel that movement, literature, music, like we need to understand their language. For example, hip hop. What is hip hop to us versus hip hop to them? Speak their language. Understand their autonomy. Create, get involved. Create that relationship where they feel that they can trust you and open up to their teacher. So with all of that said, I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's a part of my legacy that I want to do, bring more performing arts into the classroom.
And my last question, what would you say to a new learner entering the dissertation phase that will be important to successfully completing their dissertation, and why?
To a new learner, get to know your committee. Reach out to your committee members. Don't be a stranger. If you have problems, contact your chair or members immediately. If you don't understand something, do your due diligence. Investigate, research, even if that research seems, somewhat foreign. And research is, if you don't know how to do research on a level that's needed for dissertation, it is foreign and it's complex. I feel that we're not giving dissertation students enough information. We're like throwing students out into the wilderness and expect them to produce and come back with something that's viable and sustainable and able to disseminate and do a decent defense. I know what I went through. This is not easy. And we need to guide, students need to be guided through this process. And I feel like there's not enough of that. So reaching out and communicating is very, very, very important when you're going through the dissertation process.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. We will allow other members from the committee to ask a question. Dr. Calares, any questions for Ms. Murphy?
Ms. Murphy, two things that stood out: the theme of theme 2 findings and your theme 5 findings, the lack of resources and the mental health issues with African American students. I guess my question is, during your either your literature review, initial research, or your interviews with your teachers,
Mhm.
did you find that some of these same issues that have impacted African American students also impacted non-African American students?
When you say non-African American students, you mean students Latinos?
For example, you talk about, I'll use theme two, the resources, lack of
Right,
resources
right.
have impacted African American students.
Okay. Okay.
Do do lack of resources in the classroom have that same impact on their white peers?
Yes. Oh, no, it doesn't. Excuse me. White kids get their resources. They don't have to worry. It's there, it's viable because parents, I think, are invested and they have the means and the income. Where Black parents are struggling. These parents have 3 and 4 jobs.
Right.
You know, they have these kids have siblings. You have kids that are working after school. So yes, resources are, I guess, the name of the game.
Well, I guess what I refer to as resources, because you mentioned resources provided by the school.
Yes.
So what I assumed what I heard was lack of resources provided by the school, and I don't disagree with you. But my question is there any correlation or is there any comparison between the lack of resources provided by the school to African American students? Is it the same impact for white students?
No, it's okay. No, it's not.
It's not.
Like white students will get their due. They're going to have it. Everything is mapped out for them. They don't have to worry. Resources are there. Black kids, the resources, especially if these schools are in marginalized areas that are poor, the resources are not there. The school doesn't have the funds to enable better teaching tools. The toolkit in Black schools are diminishing
So in
each
your
and every day.
let me ask you this. So the teachers you interviewed, all of the students in those schools were African American or students of color. There were no white students in those schools whatsoever.
No, there really was no, there wasn't. It was all African American students because that was my research study.
So
It was African.
every student in that you interviewed
Mhm.
only had students that were African American or students of color.
Basically, yes.
So basically, yes means
Oh,
yes, or
okay.
basically
Yes,
means there
yes,
were some white
yes,
students.
yes, Dr. Claris. They were African American middle school students. That was the nature of my research.
No, I understand that. No, I
Yeah,
understand that. Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand.
They were
And then
basic.
my
Okay.
next question is theme five, regarding mental health. You talked about mental health, puberty, that impacting African American students. Is
Mhm.
that do you believe that was a relationship to what happens in this classroom, or is that just a natural process of them getting older and going from childhood to adolescence?
It's a natural process. The body is developing. The physiology of a child from childhood to adolescence, they're going through all sorts of mental, emotional, and spiritual uprisings in their bodies, in the way they think and how they feel. That's why their autonomy is so precious to them.
Right.
That group, everything is secretive. Everything is, you don't understand me. And I'm sure you've heard that. You don't know what I'm talking about. You have no idea. You don't get it. It's you don't get it. And you do get it. But perhaps maybe you don't get it on their level now because they're dealing with a whole different world. The technology now is, completely different from when I was coming up. I'm sure yourself. So We're dealing with a whole different crop of demographics where we need to understand and listen and to be relatable to them. Because if we are not, we're still going to lose these kids. Know their language, know their styles, know their fashion, know their music, know everything about them in order to be relatable. So when they come to you with the problems or you see the problems, you can relate to them on that level or on their level. But to pretend like, just because you don't understand the situation with them, you don't understand the music, or you don't understand the way they dress, or you don't understand why they wear their pants sagged or whatever, that's not their problem. That's your problem. And we have to stay in tune and we have to stay connected in order to save this demographic. Because if we don't, we're going to lose these kids. So stay hip. That's all. Just stay hip.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fernand Pulley.
I think Dr. Shawani had a question. Dr. Shawani, I think his hand was raised.
Oh, I think that's fine. Let the next committee member go. If we have time, I can ask.
Oh, okay. Dr. Toller?
Yeah, just got two quick questions. First one is, if you were to do this all over again, what changes would you make?
I knew someone was going to ask me that question. Thank you, Dr. Toller. First of all, I want to talk to the parent. I want to have a forum where the teacher and parent are talking to each other.
Yeah, she ain't even came down here, man, and said anything about that.
Should I go on? Oh, okay. I want to talk to the parent, and I know talking to the student is very sensitive because you're dealing with IRB and you're dealing with kids. But I want to hear what these kids got to say, because they are the stakeholders. They are the real deal. I want to broaden my perspective, my geographical areas. I want to go down south. I want to go to Atlanta, to Houston, and to the major metropolitan areas, South Carolina, to find out where is the disengagement, or how are these kids engaged versus disengagement. Because this is across the board. This isn't something, a new phenomenon that's just in this little area, this little box. This is spreading like wildfire. So yes, the teacher was very important, but I want to hear the parent. I want to hear the student. And I want to see the parent and teacher together in a forum. So that would be my research design change.
All right, thank you. One more.
Yes.
What professional journal do you want to publish in?
Oh, I like that one. Okay, I want to publish in the Journal of Adolescence Research, JAR, J-A-R, because that really deals with the adolescents and their problems and, the ups and downs of what they're going through mentally, because we don't seem to understand these, because these are little kids from 10 to 13 years of age. They're not grown people, even though they come across like they know everything, but they know nothing. The Journal of African American Male Education, JAAME. I just read, that's dealing with male teachers. I just read a great article that they put out just the other day, and I talked about hip hop. They said music is a catalyst. Music is the bridge. Let's cross that bridge. We cannot pretend. We are dealing in a world of pop culture. We have to understand. We're not old, because there's nothing new under the sun, because we've had our little, types of music back in the day. But now we have to connect with this generation. And this is a strong, powerful generation that we need to understand. So again, language, like Vygotsky said, play and work, culture, language, history. Connect the dots. We must connect the dots. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Sandra.
You're welcome.
Dr. Shangwani?
Thank you so much. Sandra, I think
You're
I just
welcome.
want to follow up on the question that was asked previously about the lack of resources
Yes.
and then the mental health. Again, I
Yes.
thought that the question was about, okay, is this unique to African American, or could this also be experienced by others, say students from poor backgrounds? They say, for example, there's Hispanic Americans who are from poor backgrounds. Do they also face the same challenges? So that we cannot just say that, okay, this is purely unique to African American, even if the study was on African American.
Well, I'm sure there is problems with other groups. You know, that's another research. I focus primarily on African American middle school students. I'm an African American. I feel their pain. I know what it's like to be in schools that are under-resourced. I've seen run-down textbooks in these marginalized poor schools with teachers who are ill-fitted to be teaching. Yes, I'm sure Hispanic kids go through the same thing. I'm sure, migrant kids go through the same thing, but that's for a different study. Right now, I have to stay focused on my group who are right now who are in dire need of technology, skilled teachers, and the understanding that education is power. And these kids who are in the 12th grade are reading on a 4th grade level. I'm not having that at all. So yes, there is a need to branch out to other groups, but for right now, that research for me will come.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a wonderful answer, but I think it's just in terms of I mean, we are asking, personally, I'm asking these questions just from the research design point of view.
I
That when
understand.
you develop a study, say, for example, the selection of your participants or even the selections of the schools within
Yes.
New York City, it should have been representative of the New York City, so that then when we draw these conclusions, at least we are confident that we've addressed or we've looked at all these dynamics around the environment or the facilities that you studied. So that's okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but for right now, doctor, we're talking about right now. And I know my sample size was small, my geographic was small, but I'm adding to this conversation because the literature review or the literature has not been there, as Dr. Fernanda Poole said, for quite some time. So folks like myself, teachers like myself, who are coming into the system, we're picking up that literature, that conversation again, because it seemed like it went, like Dr. Fernanda Poole said, it went downhill. But we got to bring it back up because we have to understand this is an ongoing conversation that will never end for all groups, for all students, for all children, especially children of color. We must remember that.
I would like to follow with Dr. Kalera's question and Dr. Shangwani. I thought those were really good questions. And just to kind of add to this to the discussion, being from New York myself, in New York City, I think this is what Dr. Kalera's was leading to. What he was trying to say, in the city of New York, most of the young people are minority children, and majority are Hispanic and or African American. So majority would be either or Hispanic or African American. So in terms of the lack of resources, more than likely it would also impact the Hispanic population, and perhaps if you have some white students, impact in terms of lack of resources, mental health, those kinds of things. But majority of the students in New York City are minority students. So more of the impact in terms of lack of resources and mental health would be more geared towards African Americans and the Hispanic population based upon the demographics of New York City and the boroughs of New York.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just that I didn't want to open that Pandora's box.
Right. But those are really good questions, because now
Yeah.
your study, if you
Yeah,
want
well,
to do more studies, that could be a really good focus.
Yeah,
So
and I
Dr.
appreciate
Harris
that,
really hit on something really great. And Dr.
I
Shawani,
appreciate
that
Dr.
could be a
Harris.
really good study, a future study, to really kind of look at other groups and see what that looks like, and especially being that New York City also has a large Hispanic population in the city of New York.
But my thing is not to, with all due respect, African American students are always pulling up the ranks for other groups. You know, yes, we have Hispanic students who are suffering in other groups, but we always have to incorporate our situations or our struggles with other groups. We cannot be our own entity. We have to always, there has to be some justification to give the additional funding or resources. If this was an all-Black school, these kids wouldn't have anything. But because there is a integration of Hispanics and perhaps whites, yes, they're getting more than what they would normally get, because that's the racism behind education. This is why critical race theory is very, very important right now, because this is what they're talking about. We need to open the conversation and figure out, yes, children are suffering. But what about these Black children that have been suffering since Brown versus the Board of Education? We need to look at that. And that's where my study was focused for this particular research.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Murphy. If not, I will start the recording. We have returned. The committee has convened, and we would like to say, Ms. Murphy, that you have successfully passed your dissertation defense. Congratulations, Dr. Murphy. We appreciate your study, and it's such a much needed study. We thank the audience, Dr. Shangwani. We thank you for your questions, and it really, really just kind of shed light on research and what further research needs to be done. And we thank you for this research, because every research study, in my opinion, just adds to this body of knowledge.
Adds to the conversation.
and I'm so thankful that you took the time to do your study. And I hope that you continue to do further research studies and to use this conversation as a mechanism to really go out there and engage in more research studies. So we look forward to hearing a whole lot about all of your successes. We thank you for your questions and your dissertation. It was really, now, but I'll make sure I put that on my encouraging other students to read your dissertation. But thank you so much for a really good dissertation. You presented very well. You covered a lot of different bases, and you really gave us a lot to think about, and you really gave a really well-rounded discussion here. So thank you. Would the committee like to say anything? Dr. Caleres?
Sandra, congratulations. I enjoyed reading your paper, your dissertation, enjoyed working with you. Remember, my job is always to make you think critically.
I know.
So, hey, congratulations and welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Dr. Toler?
I said,
congratulations to Sandra. I'm proud of you, and continued success.
Thank you so much. I said, Dr. Caleres is socking it to me today. He gonna give it to me. Go ahead, Doctor.
That's what he's supposed to have done.
That's what he's supposed to do.
Dr. Shawani? Dr. Shawani?
Thank you so much, and congrats, Dr. Murphy. On behalf of the program chair, that is the Doctor of Education, And on behalf of doctoral studies and Franklin University in general, we just like to say congrats, congrats, congrats for the wonderful job you've done, and welcome to the club. And so
Thank
as a university, if there is anything that you would need along the way, maybe you'd want to publish, you'd want to do more research, just know that the institution is at your disposal. You can reach out. We are here to support you. Just like we've told our former students, former graduates, that we are here to support you in any possible way. Because as you know, you're forever connected to Franklin University. So again, congrats and all the best in what lays ahead for you.
Dr.
Thank you so
Chouani,
much, and thanks to the committee for all your wonderful work.
And
Dr.
Dr.
Chouani,
Murphy,
I'm
Dr. Shangwani is a quantitative expert. So
I know,
if
and
you're
I'm going to start
interested-
getting
right, if you're interested in further research in terms of what that looks like on a quantitative outlook, Dr. Shangwani is your quantitative expert here. So thank you, Dr. Shangwani.
Dr. Chouani, before you leave, I want to come to Kenya. You're from Kenya, right?
Yes.
I'm coming to Kenya to do my research.
Welcome.
Academic disengagement in
Wonderful,
Africa.
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes this particular dissertation defense. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for putting me in the club. Thank you.
Dr. Murphy, you can stay on.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Dr.